The distress signal cut through the void of space like a knife through silk. Commander Zara Vex of the Galactic Alliance vessel. Harmony's Grace stared at the holographic display, her 6 delicate fingers trembling as they traced the incoming message. The translation matrix struggled with the alien dialect, but the meaning was clear enough to make her secondary hearts skip their synchronized beats. "Help us. Please. Anyone." The message repeated on a loop, growing weaker with each transmission. Around the command deck, her crew of various species exchanged worried glances. The Velkari communications officer's feathers rustled nervously, while the Aquarian navigator's translucent skin flickered with patterns of distress. "Origin point identified," the navigator announced, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sector 779, the Korvax system." A collective gasp filled the bridge. The Korvax system sat on the very edge of known space, bordering the quarantine zone that every civilized species avoided. Beyond that invisible line lay the domain of monsters, the nightmare realm from which no explorer had ever returned. The Deathworlds. "Commander," the Velkari officer chirped, "regulations are clear. We cannot approach the quarantine zone. The Council forbids—" "I know what the Council forbids," Zara interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of command despite her species' naturally melodic tone. "But someone needs help. Run a deep scan. I want to know exactly where this signal originates." The scan results made her worst fears reality. The distress call came from just inside the quarantine zone, from a small research station that shouldn't exist. According to official records, no one had authorization to build anything near Deathworld space. Yet there it was, a tiny spark of life crying out in the darkness. "How many life signs?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "Approximately 300, came the response. "Multiple species. Their power systems are failing. Life support will collapse within 48 hours, maybe less." Zara closed her primary eyes, running the calculations in her mind. No Alliance vessel could reach them in time. The nearest patrol ship was 5 days away at maximum speed. Even if they called for help now, even if someone was brave enough to respond, those 300 souls would be dead long before rescue arrived. Unless— "Open a priority channel to Alliance Command," she ordered. "Full encryption." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Kresh, a Thrakari whose scales had dulled with age and worry. His 4 eyes widened when he saw Zara's expression. "Commander Vex, I'm reading your position. You're dangerously close to— Admiral, we've received a distress signal from inside the quarantine zone. 300 lives, multiple species. They have less than 2 days. The Admiral's scales shifted to a darker hue, a sign of deep distress among his kind. That's impossible. No one is authorized to be there. It must be a trap, a deception from the Deathworld entities. Sir, I verified the signal. It's genuine. These are real people in real danger. Even if that's true, you know our laws. No vessel may cross into Deathworld space. The risk is too great. Those monsters. "What if we didn't cross?" Zara interrupted, an idea forming that made her feel sick even as she voiced it. "What if we asked them to cross to us?" The bridge fell silent. Even the gentle hum of the ship's systems seemed to pause at the audacity of her suggestion. Admiral Kresh's scales went pale, almost white. "You're suggesting we contact the Deathworlders? The humans?" The word hung in the air like a curse. Humans. The species that evolved on a world so hostile that galactic scientists classified it as Category 12 Death World, the highest rating possible. A planet of extreme gravity, deadly predators, toxic atmosphere to most species, and weather patterns that defied belief. Somehow, impossibly, sentient life had not only survived there but thrived, and become something terrifying in the process. Admiral, they're the only ones who could survive a rescue mission in that environment. Their ships are built to withstand conditions that would tear ours apart. Their bodies can endure pressures and temperatures that would kill us in seconds. Commander Vex, the Admiral's voice dropped to a warning growl. Humans are classified as a level 5 dangerous species for a reason. They're unpredictable, violent. Their entire history is written in blood and conflict. We've maintained the quarantine to keep them contained, not to invite them out. 300 lives, Admiral, including children. I've detected at least 40 juvenile life signs in that station. The Admiral's expression cracked. Children changed everything in galactic law and moral code. Protection of the young was the one universal constant among all civilized species. Even the most hardened military officers would break protocol to save children. You realize what you're asking? If we open communications with Earth, if we invite them beyond the quarantine zone, we can't put that back in the box. The Council will have both our heads. Then let them, Zara said firmly. I won't sit here and listen to children die when we have an option, however distasteful. Admiral Kresh was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a decision that would echo through history. You have authorization for a single communication burst. One message. If the humans respond with aggression, you are to jump to hyperspace immediately. The connection ended, leaving Zara with the magnitude of what she was about to do. No one had spoken to Earth in over 50 standard years, not since the quarantine was established. The last diplomatic mission had ended with the human ambassador laughing at what the Alliance considered generous terms for limiting human expansion. They'd laughed and said they didn't need the galaxy's permission to exist. Communications, prepare a narrow beam transmission to Earth, standard diplomatic protocols. Commander, the Velkari officer's voice shook, Earth's communication systems are unusual. They don't use quantum entanglement or subspace carriers like civilized species. They still use primitive electromagnetic broadcasts for local communication. Then how do we? They have one quantum receiver installed during the last diplomatic contact. But, Commander, it's located in something they call the United Nations Space Command. They're military. Of course it was. Everything about humans seemed to involve their military in some way. While the rest of the galaxy had evolved beyond constant warfare, humans still maintained massive armed forces, as if expecting the universe itself to attack them at any moment. Which, Zara reflected, might not be far from the truth given their homeworld. Send the message, she ordered. Include all details about the distress signal, the location, the time constraint. Make it clear this is a humanitarian request, not a military one. The message went out, carried by quantum entanglement to a receiver on a planet that gave nightmares to xenobiologists. Earth, a world where the rain could strip flesh from bones, where the wind could lift entire structures, where the very ground could open up and swallow cities. A world where predators hunted in every environment, from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains. A world that had forged humans into something the galaxy feared. Minutes passed like hours. The bridge crew barely breathed, all eyes on the communication panel, waiting for a response that might never come. Or worse, a response that came with weapons charged and demands for surrender. Then, impossibly fast, a message appeared. Not through the quantum receiver, but somehow pushed through subspace itself, using technology the Alliance didn't even know existed. The humans had been busy during their isolation. The message was brief, written in perfect galactic standard despite the decades of no contact. Distress signal received, coordinates confirmed, rescue vessel dispatched, ETA 14 hours. Tell them to hold on, the cavalry's coming. Zara read it 3 times, certain she was misunderstanding. 14 hours? That's impossible. Even at maximum hyperspace velocity, it would take at least 30 hours to reach that position from Earth. Commander, the science officer spoke up, his voice filled with awe and fear. "I'm detecting a massive subspace distortion heading toward the distress signal origin. Whatever the humans are sending, it's moving at speeds our physics says shouldn't be possible." How fast? If these readings are correct, they're pushing 15 times standard hyperspace maximum. The energy requirements alone should tear their ship apart. But it wouldn't, Zara knew. Because humans built things differently. Where the Alliance designed with safety margins and careful calculations, humans built their technology like they lived their lives, pushing every boundary, taking every risk, dancing on the edge of disaster with disturbing regularity. "Send a response. Tell them we'll maintain position at the quarantine border to receive any survivors they can evacuate." "Commander, are you sure that's wise? Being this close when they arrive." "Send it." As her crew scrambled to comply, Zara stared at the holographic display showing the quarantine zone. Somewhere in that forbidden space, 300 souls waited for death or salvation, and speeding toward them at impossible velocities was a ship full of Deathworlders, humans who had evolved on a planet that seemed designed to kill everything on it. She thought about the stories, the legends that had grown up around humanity in the decades since quarantine. Stories of humans who could survive in hard vacuum for minutes without suits. Humans who could lift weights that would crush other species. Humans who treated lethal radiation like mild sunburn and laughed at toxins that would kill a Velkari in seconds. Most were exaggerations, she knew. They had to be. But then she remembered the official reports from before the quarantine. A human child, barely 5 years old by their counting, had survived 3 days alone in what they called a forest, an environment that would have killed most Alliance species in hours. The rescue team had found her playing with what the humans casually referred to as a wolf puppy, a predator that stood as tall as most civilized species and could bite with enough force to shatter steel. The child had been upset when told she couldn't keep it as a pet. "Commander," the communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "We're receiving multiple signals from the research station. They've detected the human approach. They're terrified, ma'am. They're begging us to call off the rescue." "What? Why?" "They say they'd rather die than let Deathworlders board their station. They're calling them demons, monsters, the devourers of worlds." Zara's heart sank. This was the fear that had led to the quarantine in the first place. Not fear of what humans had done, but fear of what they might do. Fear of a species that had looked at a death world and decided to call it home. "Open a channel to the station." A moment later, a frightened voice filled the bridge. The speaker was Al-Taran, judging by the melodic tones undermined by terror. "Please, Alliance vessel, call them off. We know what humans do. We've heard the stories. They'll harvest us for food, use our bones for their rituals, make trophies of our skins." "This is Commander Zara Vex," she said, using her most calming voice. "The humans are coming to help. They've responded to your distress call with a rescue mission." "Lies! Deceptions! Humans don't help! They conquer! They consume! They—" The transmission cut to static. Then, impossibly, another voice came through. Deep, resonant, and speaking accented but clear galactic standard. "Research Station Omega-7. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Endeavor. We'll be with you in 13 hours. Start prepping your people for evacuation. We have medical personnel standing by." The human's voice was calm, professional, almost bored. As if racing through space at physics-defying speeds to rescue aliens who feared them was just another day at work. How are you on our communications?" the Al-Taran voice quavered. "Your comm system has a frequency leak. We patched it. No offense, but your encryption is about 70 years out of date. Now let's talk about your situation. My sensors show your power core is failing. Can you reroute auxiliary power to life support?" What followed was the strangest conversation Zara had ever witnessed. The human captain, still 13 hours away, walked the terrified station personnel through emergency procedures with the patience of a teacher instructing children. She identified failing systems from impossible distances, suggested repairs using materials the station had on hand, and even made what seemed to be a joke about something called duct tape that none of the aliens understood. Slowly, impossibly, the fear in the station's responses began to fade. The human was helping them, talking them through their terror with a mixture of competence and compassion that defied every story about human brutality. "Okay, that should buy you an extra 6 hours on life support," Captain Chen said. "We'll be there long before then. How many children do you have aboard?" 43, the Alteran admitted, his voice small. 43 kids. Right. We're pushing engines to 110%. Make that 12 hours. Nobody's dying on my watch, especially not kids. 110%. Zara's engineer made a sound of distress at the very concept. You couldn't run engines at more than 100%. That's not how mathematics worked. That's not how physics worked. That's not how anything worked unless you were human, apparently. "Captain Chen," Zara found herself transmitting, "this is Commander Vex of the Alliance vessel Harmony's Grace. We're holding position at the quarantine border. What are your intentions after the rescue?" "Commander Vex." The human's voice carried what might have been amusement. "Nice to hear from the Alliance after all these years. Our intentions are simple. We're going to get those people out, bring them to you, and then go home. We're not looking to start any trouble. The Council will have questions about your technology. That speed is perfectly safe when you know what you're doing," Chen interrupted. "Look, Commander, I get it. Big, scary humans coming out of the haunted house. But right now we've got 300 people who need help. Everything else is just politics." She was right, of course. But Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were witnessing something momentous. The first human rescue of Alliance citizens. The first time Deathworlders had shown themselves as something other than monsters to be feared. "Captain, may I ask why? Why respond to this distress call? Your people owe us nothing. The quarantine was your choice, not ours," Chen said, her voice hardening slightly. "We've respected it because you asked us to, because you're all so terrified of us that we figured it was better to stay in our corner of space than cause a panic. But those aren't politicians or soldiers out there. They're people, kids. And where I come from, when someone calls for help, you answer. It's that simple." Where she came from, Earth, the death world. A place where helping others might mean facing predators, natural disasters, or worse. Yet they did it anyway. Had built an entire civilization on the principle that when someone called for help, you answered. Maybe that was the most terrifying thing about humans, not their strength or their technology or their ability to survive the impossible. Maybe it was their stubborn, irrational insistence on helping others, even when those others feared and hated them. "We'll be ready to receive the evacuees," Zara said. "Appreciated, Commander. Endeavor out." The channel closed, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. In 12 hours, give or take, a human ship would arrive at that station. Deathworlders would walk among people who had been raised on stories of human brutality and horror, and they would save them. "Commander," her science officer spoke quietly, "what have we done?" "Hopefully," Zara replied, watching the timer count down, "the right thing." But as she stared at the stars, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just changed the course of galactic history. The humans were coming out of quarantine, even if just for this rescue, and despite all the fear, all the stories, all the warnings, they were coming to help. The Deathworlders had answered the call. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace like a predator pouncing on prey. One moment, empty space. The next, a massive vessel that defied every principle of elegant design the Alliance held dear. Where Alliance ships were smooth and graceful, built for efficiency and beauty, the human vessel looked like it had been designed by someone who considered aesthetics a weakness. It was all angles and armor, bristling with equipment that Zara's sensors couldn't even identify. The ship bore scars across its hull, evidence of encounters with forces that should have destroyed it. Yet it moved with a grace that belied its brutalist appearance, sliding through space toward the failing research station with disturbing precision. "By the sacred nebula," her navigator whispered, "look at the size of those engine outputs. They're running hot enough to melt our hull from 1,000 kilometers away." "Captain Chen to Commander Vex," the human's voice crackled over comms. "We're beginning approach to the station. Fair warning, things might get a little intense. Their structural integrity is worse than I thought. We're going to have to do this the hard way." "The hard way?" Zara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Manual docking with mag clamps and cutting through their hull. Their docking systems are completely fried. Don't worry, we've done this before. Casually talking about cutting through a hull in deep space like it was a routine procedure, the Valkyrie communications officer's feathers were standing straight up in alarm. On the view screen, they watched the human ship move with impossible precision toward the dying station. The research facility was spinning slowly, its stabilizers offline, making any docking attempt incredibly dangerous. A normal Alliance rescue would have taken hours of careful calculation and matched rotation. The humans took 7 minutes. Their ship's pilot, whoever or whatever was controlling that massive vessel, matched the station's erratic spin perfectly, sliding alongside it like a dancer matching their partner's movements. Magnetic clamps shot out, anchoring the two vessels together with thuds that echoed through space. "Station Omega-7, this is Captain Chen. We're attached. I need everyone moved to sections 4 and 7. Those are the most structurally sound. We're coming in through section 5. You're going to breach our hull?" The Alteran's voice was near panic. "Controlled breach. We've got atmospheric shields ready. Trust me, you don't want to try the airlocks in your condition. Half of them are already compromised." What followed was a masterclass in controlled destruction. Zara watched in horrified fascination as suited figures emerged from the human ship. Even through the distance and interference, she could see they moved differently than any species she knew. Too fast, too smooth, like predators stalking through vacuum. Their suits were nothing like the bulky life preservation units the Alliance used. These were form-fitting, obviously designed for combat as much as survival. Each human moved with purpose, setting up equipment around a section of the station's hull with practiced efficiency. "Breaching in 30 seconds, Chen announced. "Everyone back from the walls." A brilliant line of light traced a perfect circle in the station's hull. The metal glowed, melted, and then a section simply vanished. Zara's science officer made a strangled sound. "They just vaporized 3 meters of reinforced hull plating. The energy requirements are considerable," Chen's voice cut in, apparently monitoring their communications. "Sorry for eavesdropping, Commander. Bad habit. We're inside. Beginning evacuation." What happened next would be debated in Alliance military academies for decades to come. The humans flowed into the station like water through a breach. There were 12 of them, moving in perfect coordination, despite the spinning, failing gravity and panicked aliens inside. They split into teams without verbal communication, each knowing exactly where to go and what to do. The first team headed directly for the children. Through the station's failing internal cameras, Zara watched a massive human in full armor approach a group of terrified younglings. Various species, all huddled together, some crying in frequencies that would have shattered human eardrums. The human stopped 3 meters away and did something extraordinary. He sat down. The armored figure, who could have torn through the station's walls with bare hands, sat cross-legged on the deck and removed his helmet. The face revealed was surprisingly young, with skin darker than space and eyes that smiled despite the situation. He said something the translators couldn't catch, then reached into a pouch and pulled out, "Are those toys?" Zara's communications officer asked in disbelief. They were. Simple, colorful objects that the human began juggling with expert precision. The children, despite their terror, couldn't help but watch. One brave Velkari chick crept forward, drawn by curiosity stronger than fear. The human caught the juggling balls and held one out to the child. When the chick took it, the human smiled and produced more, teaching the youngling how to toss and catch. Within minutes, the entire group of children had moved from paralyzed terror to cautious interest. "That's Sergeant Martinez," Captain Chen's voice explained. "He has 4 kids back home. Said he'd handle the youngsters. Man could charm the scales off a dragon." Meanwhile, other teams worked with brutal efficiency. They found the injured and carried them with a gentleness that contradicted their strength. One human lifted a full-grown Thrakari, a species that averaged 300 kilograms, as easily as Zara might lift a datapad. But the hands that could bend steel cradled the injured being like precious glass. The station's power chose that moment to fail completely. Emergency lighting flickered and died, plunging sections into absolute darkness. The temperature began dropping immediately, heading toward the lethal cold of space. The humans didn't even pause. Lights blazed from their suits, illuminating the darkness. They moved faster now, urgency driving them. One human physically held a door open as civilians streamed through, a door designed to withstand stellar pressure, held open by human muscle and determination. "Environmental collapse in Section 3, someone screamed over comms. "The hull is fracturing." 2 humans immediately ran toward the danger, not away from it. They found a group of scientists trapped behind a pressure door that had sealed when the hull began to crack. The aliens inside had minutes at most before the section explosively decompressed. The humans didn't hesitate. One began cutting through the door, while the other did something that made Zara's engineer whimper. She manually held the cracking hull together. The human's armored hands pressed against the fracture, and impossibly, the crack stopped spreading. "Did she just—" The engineer couldn't finish. "Temporary measure," Chen said tightly. "Maria can't hold it long. Johnson, how's that door coming?" 10 seconds. You've got 5. The door fell inward just as the hull began to give. The trapped scientists stumbled out and the 2 humans grabbed them, running for safety as the section behind them vanished into space with a roar of escaping atmosphere. They made it with seconds to spare. "Section 3 is gone," one of the humans reported, barely breathing hard. "All personnel evacuated." All through the station, similar scenes played out. Humans doing things that should have been impossible, pushing the limits of physics and biology to save people who had been raised to fear them. They were gentle with the terrified, patient with the slow, and fierce in their protection of the helpless. One human carried 7 children at once, having somehow rigged a makeshift carrier from cargo netting. Another used her suit's heating elements to keep a cold-sensitive Altaran warm, depleting her own power reserves in the process. A third human stood as a living shield when a power conduit exploded, taking shrapnel that would have shredded the civilians behind him. Hull breach in Section 2. Atmospheric shields failing. This was the worst-case scenario. A breach too large for shields to handle, with dozens of people still in the affected area. The humans reacted instantly. "Emergency Protocol 7, Chen barked. "All teams converge on Section 2. Morrison, I need you to—" "Already on it, Cap." What happened next entered legend. 5 humans linked their suits' atmospheric shields together, creating a bubble of survivable space in a corridor that was venting into vacuum. They stood there, holding the line against the infinite hunger of space, while their teammates evacuated everyone from the breached section. The energy drain was enormous. Zara watched their suit power levels plummet towards 0. They were literally using their own life support to keep the corridor pressurized. "Shields failing," one reported. "Maybe 30 seconds left." "Then you've got 25 to get clear," Chen ordered. The last civilian cleared the section with 5 seconds to spare. The humans ran, their suits screaming warnings as power reserves hit critical. The shields collapsed just as they dove through an emergency bulkhead, sealing it behind them as the section they'd just left turned into a howling void. "All teams, status report. Team 1, all children secured. Team 2, injured evacuated. Team 3, last civilians loading now." Through it all, the humans never stopped talking to the frightened beings around them. They offered reassurances in broken galactic standard, shared their water supplies with those who could drink it, and even, incredibly, made jokes. "Hey," one human said to a terrified Velkari, "you know what the worst part about space rescues is? No one can hear you scream for ice cream." The joke was terrible, the translation mangled, but the tone was so genuinely friendly that the Velkari actually laughed. Within an hour, all 300 beings were safely aboard the human ship. The humans had saved every single life, including one that hadn't been on the original count, a pregnant Alteran who had been hiding her condition. "Medical bay is prepped," a new voice reported. "Dr. Okafor says she can handle the different physiologies. Something about it being easier than that time with the... Captain, what's a honey badger incident?" "Long story," Chen replied. "Tell her thanks. All teams, prepare for emergency jump. This station's about to come apart." The humans flowed back to their ship with the same efficiency they'd shown in the rescue. The last one aboard turned at the airlock, looking back at the dying station. Through the cameras, Zara saw him place a hand over his heart, some sort of human gesture, before sealing the hatch. The Endeavor detached just as the station began its final collapse. Structural members twisted, hull plates peeled away, and the entire facility crumbled like a sandcastle before the tide. If the rescue had taken even 10 minutes longer. "Jump coordinates locked in," Chen announced. "Next stop, the quarantine border. Commander Vex, you might want to prep your medical teams. We've got injured here, and I'm betting you know their physiology better than we do." The human ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only the expanding cloud of debris that had once been Research Station Omega-7. On the bridge of the Harmony's Grace, no one spoke for a long moment. They had just witnessed something that challenged every preconception, every carefully taught fear about humans. "They saved them all," the navigator whispered. "Every last one." While making jokes, the communications officer added, feathers slowly settling. "Did you see how they moved? How they fought against the station's death?" The engineer sounded almost reverent. "They weren't trying to conquer or destroy, they were trying to save." Zara stared at the debris field, processing what she'd witnessed. The humans had been everything the stories warned about. Impossibly strong, frighteningly fast, wielding technology that defied understanding. They were predators, no doubt about it. But they were predators who sat down with frightened children, who depleted their own life support to save strangers, who made terrible jokes to ease terror and carried the injured like precious cargo. "Incoming hyperspace signature," the navigator announced. "It's the Endeavor. Commander, they're already here." The journey that should have taken hours had been completed in minutes. Another impossible human feat to add to the growing list. The ship appeared precisely at the quarantine border, not a meter over the line. "Commander Vex, Captain Chen, we've got 300 souls here who need homes to go back to. Permission to approach and transfer?" "Permission granted, Captain. Our medical bays are ready." "Appreciated. Fair warning, they're all a bit shaken up. But my people have been keeping them calm. Turns out humans aren't the only ones who appreciate bad jokes and chocolate. Who knew? Chocolate. The humans had been sharing chocolate with species they'd never met before. Such a small thing. Yet it spoke volumes about their preparation and intent. They'd come ready not just to rescue, but to comfort. The transfer was smooth and professional. Human shuttles docked with the Harmony's grace, delivering the survivors with the same care they'd shown throughout the rescue. Each group was escorted by a human who knew their names, their injuries, their specific needs. Sergeant Martinez, the one who'd charmed the children, personally carried a young all-Terran who'd attached herself to him. The child was asleep, tiny fingers clutched in the fabric of his suit, trusting the Deathworlder completely. "She hasn't let go since I picked her up," Martinez explained to Zara, his voice soft. "Her parents didn't make it to the station. The researchers were all she had. Is there someone who can—" "We'll ensure she's cared for," Zara assured him. The human nodded, then very gently transferred the sleeping child to a medical officer. The little one whimpered, but didn't wake. Martinez watched them go with an expression that would have been impossible on the face of the monsters from the stories. One by one, all the survivors were transferred. The injured were rushed to medical, the children to specially prepared areas with counselors standing by. The human medical officer, Dr. Okafor, insisted on accompanying them. "I've been treating them for the past hour," she explained. "Your people should know what I've done. Also, I promised the kids I'd make sure they were okay. You don't break promises to kids." Captain Chen was the last aboard. In person, she was smaller than Zara had expected, though the way she moved suggested that size meant nothing. Her eyes were the most striking feature. They held a weight of experience that spoke of many such rescues, many close calls, many lives balanced on the edge of her decisions. "Commander Vex," Chen said, offering what appeared to be a greeting gesture, an extended hand. Zara carefully took it, finding the human's grip firm but careful. "Captain Chen, what you did today was what anyone would do," Chen interrupted gently. "What anyone with the ability should do, that's all. The Council will want to debrief you. There will be questions about your technology, your methods." "I'm sure there will be." Chen's smile was tired but genuine. "But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, 300 people are alive. That's what matters." "Why?" Zara found herself asking. "Your people owe us nothing. We've kept you isolated, treated you as monsters. Why answer our call?" Chen was quiet for a moment, looking back at her ship through the viewport. "You know what Earth is like? A death world, Category 12, hostile beyond imagination." "It is that," Chen agreed. "Everything on Earth tries to kill you. The weather, the wildlife, the geology, hell, even the plants have it out for us. You know what the #1 cause of death was for early humans?" Zara shook her head. "Other humans," Chen said quietly. "For thousands of years, we were our own worst enemy. We nearly wiped ourselves out more times than I can count. But you know what else we did?" She turned back to Zara, those weighted eyes holding something that might have been hope. "We learned to help each other. When the storms came, we sheltered together. When predators attacked, we stood together. When one group had food and another was starving, we learned to share. Not always, not perfectly, but enough to survive, enough to thrive, enough to look at a death world and call it home." Chen gestured toward the medical bay where the survivors were being treated. "So when someone calls for help, whether they're human or Alteran or whatever, we answer. Because that's how we survived. That's how anyone survives. Together." She straightened, becoming the professional soldier again. "My ship will stay on this side of the border until you confirm all the survivors are stable. After that, we'll head home. But Commander—" "Yes? This doesn't have to be the last time. We've respected your quarantine, but if someone needs help again—" She shrugged. "We'll be listening." With that, Captain Sarah Chen of Earth turned and headed back to her shuttle. The human crew followed, each nodding respectfully to the Alliance personnel they passed. Warriors who had just saved 300 lives and were heading back to their death world as if it were just another day. The shuttle departed, returning to the impossible ship that had made physics itself bend to human will. Within minutes, the Endeavor had moved to a holding position, close enough to respond if needed, but far enough to avoid making the Alliance crew nervous. "Commander," her communications officer said quietly, "the survivors are asking to send a message to the humans." "What kind of message?" "Gratitude. They want to thank them. All of them, even the ones who were terrified, especially the ones who were terrified." Zara felt something shift in her chest. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was the beginning of understanding. "Transmit their messages. All of them." For the next hour, heartfelt thanks poured across the void. Children drew pictures that were scanned and sent. Adults composed formal statements of gratitude. The injured sent blessings in a dozen languages. The human response was typically brief. "You're welcome. Take care of each other. Endeavor crew." As the survivors were treated and housed, as families were reunited and stories were shared, Zara found herself returning again and again to Chen's words. Together. Such a simple concept, yet one that had apparently driven humans to conquer a death world and build ships that defied physics. The Velkari communications officer approached her, feathers ruffled in thought. "Commander, I've been analyzing the rescue footage." "What have you found?" "The humans. They never hesitated, not once. Each time they faced a choice between their safety and saving someone, they chose to save, even when the probability of success was minimal." "I noticed. That's not normal behavior for any species we know. Evolution should have selected against such extreme altruism. It's not logical." Zara thought about Earth, about the death world that had forged these people. Perhaps on a world where everything tries to kill you, the only way to survive is to be illogical, to choose hope over probability, to save others because one day you might need saving too. "You think they're not monsters?" "Oh, they're definitely monsters," Zara said, surprising herself with a laugh. "They're the monsters who come when children cry for help. They're the monsters who hold breaking hulls together with their bare hands. They're the monsters who share chocolate and tell bad jokes while racing through vacuum to save strangers." She looked at the Endeavor on the view screen, this impossible ship full of impossible people. "They're the monsters who answered when we called." The Galactic Council chambers had never been so silent. 500 representatives from every major species in the Alliance sat in tiered rows, all eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the rescue footage. They watched humans move through vacuum, hold together breaking hulls, and carry children with impossible gentleness. When the recording ended, the silence stretched like a held breath. High Counselor Athek, ancient even by Thrakari standards, finally spoke. His voice carried the weight of centuries and the fear of many. "This emergency session has been called to address the human incident at Research Station Omega-7. We have all seen the footage. We have all read the reports. Now we must decide what to do about it." What to do about it? The voice belonged to a young Velkari representative, her feathers bright with indignation. "They saved 300 lives. What is there to decide?" "They violated the quarantine," another representative countered. "The very quarantine put in place to protect us from their dangerous nature." "Dangerous?" The Velkari stood, wings spreading slightly. "Did you not see the same footage? Did you not see Sergeant Martinez teaching children to juggle? Did you not see them sharing their life support with complete strangers?" "I saw beings of terrifying power," an Altaran elder interjected. "I saw technology that defies our understanding. I saw proof that the humans have been advancing in isolation, becoming even more capable than when we quarantined them. Today they saved lives. Tomorrow they could end them just as easily." The debate erupted in full. voices rising in a cacophony of fear, gratitude, suspicion, and wonder. Through it all, Zara stood at the witness podium, waiting to be called. Beside her stood someone else, Captain Sarah Chen, who had agreed to attend despite the obvious risk. The human stood at parade rest, calm in the face of 500 beings who had been taught to fear her species. She'd come in a simple uniform rather than armor, appearing small and unthreatening among the larger alien species. It was, Zara suspected, a deliberate choice. "Order!" High Counselor Athek's voice boomed through the chamber. "We will have testimony before we dissolve into chaos. Commander Vex, you were present for these events. Please share your observations." Zara stepped forward, activating her prepared statement. But looking at the sea of faces, some fearful, some hopeful, some angry, she set it aside. "Honored counselors," she began, "I came here prepared to give you a technical report, to discuss response times and rescue procedures. But I think you need to hear something else." She took a breath. "I was terrified when we decided to contact Earth. Every story I'd been told, every warning I'd received, said that humans were monsters waiting to devour the galaxy. When Captain Chen responded to our call, I was certain we'd made a terrible mistake." "And now?" Athek prompted. "Now I know we've been wrong. Not about human capabilities, they are everything we feared in terms of strength, speed, and technological advancement. But we were wrong about their nature." She gestured to the display. "You've seen the footage, but you weren't there. You didn't see the human who depleted her suit's power to keep an Alteran warm. You didn't hear the terrible jokes they told to make children laugh through their fear. You didn't watch them run toward danger again and again, not for glory or conquest, but because someone needed help." "Pretty words," the Alteran elder said coldly, "but they do not change what humans are. Predators, killers, a species forged in violence." "You're right." The admission came from Chen, who stepped forward for the first time. The chamber tensed, hundreds of beings instinctively pulling back from the Deathworlder in their midst. "We are predators," Chen continued, her voice carrying without shouting. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We've fought wars that would horrify you. We've done terrible things to survive." She paused. "But that's not all we are." She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. "Do you know what the most successful survival strategy on Earth is? It's not strength. It's not speed. It's not even intelligence. It's cooperation." "Cooperation?" someone scoffed. "From the species that nearly destroyed itself with nuclear weapons?" "Yes," Chen said simply, "because we learned. We looked at the ashes of our cities and decided there had to be a better way. We saw the poison in our air and water and chose to fix it. We faced extinction and chose survival, not just for ourselves, but for our whole world." She pulled out a small device, projecting an image that made the chamber gasp. Earth. Not the death world of their nightmares, but a blue-green jewel hanging in space. "This is what Earth looks like now. Beautiful, isn't it? You'd never know that 200 years ago it was dying. We'd poisoned it, burned it, stripped it bare, but we saved it. Together. Every nation, every people, working toward one goal. If we could do that, if we could save our own world from ourselves, why wouldn't we save others when they need help?" "Because you gain nothing from it," the Alteran elder said. "There must be some hidden motive, some trap." "The trap," Chen interrupted gently, "is thinking that everything is a trap. The hidden motive is that there isn't one. Sometimes, honored counselor, people just help because it's right." A young Aquarian representative raised a trembling appendage. My daughter was on that station. She's alive because of you, because of your people. How do I reconcile that with everything I've been taught?" Chen's expression softened. "You don't have to reconcile anything. We're not asking you to forget your caution overnight. We're not asking to be welcomed with open arms. We're just asking for the chance to prove that the monsters under your bed might actually be the ones who will stand guard while you sleep." "Poetic," Athek mused. "But the Council needs more than poetry. We need assurances, guarantees that human intervention won't lead to conquest." "Then let me be blunt," Chen said. "If we wanted to conquer you, we would have done it 50 years ago. You quarantined us when we had just developed faster-than-light travel. Do you really think we've spent 5 decades sitting idle on our death world?" The implications sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. "We've built colonies on worlds that would kill most of you in minutes. We've developed technology that makes your quarantine meaningless. We could leave anytime we want. We have a fleet of ships like the Endeavor, each capable of what you saw yesterday. But we stayed put. We respected your fear, your boundaries, your need to feel safe." She spread her hands. "But when you called for help, we came. And we'll come again if you need us. Not as conquerors, not as monsters, as neighbors." The debate that followed lasted hours. Representatives argued, pleaded, accused, and defended. Through it all, Chen stood patient and calm, answering every question honestly, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Yes, humans had weapons that could crack planets. Yes, they'd studied Alliance technology and improved upon it. Yes, they were capable of violence on a scale that defied imagination. But they were also capable of gentleness that defied expectation, of sacrifice that defied logic, of hope that defied reality itself. "I have a question," a small voice said during a lull in the debate. It belonged to the youngest representative, a Mercani who'd been elected just months ago. "Captain Chen, what did your chocolate taste like to the children you rescued?" The question was so unexpected that the chamber fell silent again. Chen actually smiled. "Sweet," she said. "Maybe a little bitter to some of them, but they ate it anyway because it was something normal in a terrifying situation. It was proof that even in the worst moments, there could be something good." The young representative nodded slowly. I think that's what humans are to the galaxy. Something that might be bitter at first, scary even, but maybe something good too, if we're brave enough to try." High Counselor Athek raised a hand for silence. "We will vote. All in favor of maintaining the quarantine as it stands?" Hands, tentacles, and various appendages rose throughout the chamber. Zara counted quickly, perhaps a third of the representatives. "All in favor of lifting the quarantine?" Another third, maybe slightly more. "And those who abstain pending further discussion?" The remaining representatives indicated their position. No clear majority in any direction. Athek's scales rippled in what might have been frustration or amusement. "It seems we are divided. Therefore, I propose a compromise. The quarantine remains officially in place, but with provisions for humanitarian missions. Humans may respond to distress calls and emergency situations under specific protocols to be determined." "A half measure," someone grumbled. "A beginning," Athek corrected. "Rome wasn't built in a day. As I believe the human expression goes?" Chen nodded, a ghost of a smile on her face. "Then we shall not tear down our walls in a day either. But perhaps we can open a door. Captain Chen, would your people accept such terms?" "We've waited 50 years," Chen replied. "We can be patient a little longer. But yes, we accept. When people call for help, we'll answer. That's enough for now." The vote on the compromise passed with a significant majority. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the session concluded, representatives approached Chen one by one. Some kept their distance, still wary, but others came close, offering thanks, asking questions, even attempting to shake hands in the human fashion. The young Aquarian representative whose daughter had been saved actually embraced the human captain, a gesture that would have been unthinkable hours before. Later, in a private conference room, Zara found herself sharing a meal with Chen. The human had brought her own food, something she called a sandwich that looked disturbingly like it contained meat. "Do you think it will work?" Zara asked. "This compromise?" Chen took a bite of her sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. "Change is slow, fear runs deep. But every time we answer a call, every life we save, that fear gets a little smaller. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 50, the quarantine will seem as silly as being afraid of the dark." "You're very patient for a species known for impulsiveness." "We can be patient when it matters. We waited millions of years to reach the stars. We can wait a bit longer to make friends there." Zara studied the human across from her. This Deathworlder who ate meat and piloted impossible ships and could tear apart steel with her hands. This same being who had risked everything to save strangers. "Can I ask you something personal?" Chen nodded. "What made you decide to answer our call? You, specifically. You could have ignored it. Let someone else take the risk." The human was quiet for a moment. "I have a daughter. She's about the age of some of those children we rescued. When I heard that distress call, all I could think about was her voice, asking for help. I couldn't ignore that. I couldn't let someone else's daughter die in the dark when I had the power to help." She looked up at Zara. "That's what you need to understand about humans. Yes, we're predators. Yes, we're dangerous. But we're also parents and children, brothers and sisters. We know what it's like to be afraid, to need help, to cry out in the dark and hope someone answers." "And you always answer?" "Not always," Chen admitted. "We're not perfect. We fail. We make mistakes. Sometimes we're the ones crying out, but we try. That's all anyone can do. Try to be better than their worst impulses." A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Chen checked her device and smiled. "Speaking of which, I need to go. The Endeavor is heading home, and I've got a promise to keep." "A promise?" "Sergeant Martinez promised those kids he'd teach them more juggling tricks next time he saw them. So we're uploading video tutorials to your database. Can't break a promise to kids." As she stood to leave, Zara found herself standing too. "Captain Chen, Sarah, thank you. For answering, for being patient. For proving us wrong." Chen extended her hand again, and this time Zara took it without hesitation. "Thank you for calling. It's good to know we're not alone out here." After the human left, Zara stood by the viewport, looking out at the stars. Somewhere among them, Earth spun on its axis, a death world that had created something unprecedented. Not just survivors, but saviors. Not just predators, but protectors. The quarantine remained, officially. But something had changed in those frantic hours of rescue. A door had opened, just a crack. Through it, the galaxy had glimpsed something that challenged every assumption, every fear, every carefully maintained prejudice. They'd seen the Deathworlders answer a call for help. Over the following weeks, reports trickled in from across the galaxy. A mining accident in the outer rings, where human technology could reach trapped workers. A plague on a frontier world where human medicine might help. Natural disasters where human strength could make the difference. Each time, the call went out. Each time, impossibly fast ships appeared at the border. Each time, humans in their form-fitting suits did impossible things to save lives. And each time, the fear diminished a little more. The children from the research station had started a trend. They drew pictures of their human rescuers and shared them on the galactic network. Sergeant Martinez juggling to make them laugh. The unnamed human holding the hull together with her bare hands. Captain Chen coordinating the rescue with calm precision. The pictures spread, and with them, stories. Not the old stories of human violence and conquest, but new ones. Stories of the monsters who came when you called, the predators who protected, the Deathworlders who chose life. 6 months after the rescue, Zara received a message. It was from Chen, now promoted to Commodore, apparently in charge of what humans were calling the rescue fleet. "Commander Vex," the message read, "thought you should know. That little Altaran girl, the one whose parents didn't make it, she's been adopted by one of our colonist families. They're teaching her to juggle. She says she wants to be a rescue worker when she grows up. Wanted to be like the nice monsters who saved her. Figured that might make you smile. P.S. The Council approved 3 more humanitarian corridors. We're getting busy out here. Thanks for opening that first door." Zara did smile, looking at the attached picture of a young Altaran girl in a human-style suit, far too big for her, holding juggling balls and grinning at the camera. Behind her stood her new family, 2 human parents and 3 human children, all beaming with pride. The Deathworlders had answered. And in answering, they'd changed everything. The real revolution came not from the council chambers or military strategies, but from the rescued. They returned to their worlds with stories that contradicted generations of fear. They spoke of humans who bled to save strangers, who spent their own air to keep others breathing, who made children laugh while facing death. These weren't propaganda pieces or diplomatic statements. They were personal testimonies from beings who had stared extinction in the face and been pulled back by human hands. A year after the Omega-7 rescue, the first non-human stepped foot on Earth. It was the young Mercani representative who had asked about chocolate. She volunteered for a diplomatic mission over the terrified objections of her people. The galaxy held its breath as her ship descended toward the Death World. She returned 3 weeks later, very much alive and full of stories. Stories of cities that touched the clouds, of humans who surfed on waves that could crush buildings, of children who played with animals that would terrorize most sapients. She'd eaten their food, breathed their air, even gone swimming in an ocean full of predators. "It is dangerous," she reported to the council. "Everything they say about Earth is true. It's a world that tries to kill you." She paused. "But the humans don't let it. They've taken every danger and found a way to live with it, work around it, or use it. They've made beauty from chaos." She projected images, humans teaching her to surf, sharing meals, showing her museums full of art and music. Children of the species that scared the galaxy had braided flowers into her fur and taught her their games. "I asked them how they do it," she continued. "How they live on such a world without fear. You know what they told me? They are afraid, all the time. But they do what needs doing anyway. Because that's what courage is, being afraid and acting despite it. And they see us the same way. They know we fear them. They understand why. But they hope, they believe, that one day we'll be brave enough to see past that fear. To see them as they are, not as we imagine them to be." The young representative straightened, looking each counselor in the eye. "I was brave enough to try. I found not monsters, but friends. I think it's time we all be that brave." The vote to lift the quarantine entirely didn't pass that day, or the next. But the margins grew smaller each time. More diplomatic visits followed. More rescues were performed. More lives were saved by human hands. And then, 5 years after the Omega-7 incident, a remarkable thing happened. Earth called for help. A massive solar flare, larger than any in recorded history, threatened their primary orbital station. Thousands of humans were trapped, their technology failing against the star's fury. For the first time, the Deathworlders needed rescue. The debate in the council was brief this time. "They answered when we called," the old Altaran elder said, the same one who had argued against them years before. "Honor demands we do the same." The rescue fleet that assembled was unlike anything the Alliance had fielded before. Every species contributed what they could. The Aquarians provided radiation shielding. The Velkari offered their swift scouts. The Thrakari brought their heavy lifters. Together they raced toward Earth, toward the death world that had terrified them for so long. Captain Zara Vex, promoted after Omega-7, commanded the lead vessel. As they dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, alarms screamed warnings. Radiation levels that would kill most species in minutes. Gravitational forces that could crush standard hulls. A star that seemed angry at the small beings who dared live in its light. "By the sacred nebula," her navigator whispered. "How do they live here?" But they pushed forward, shields straining, hulls groaning. The human station hung before them, damaged and dying, but still fighting. Even crippled, it was a marvel of engineering, built to withstand forces that would have vaporized Alliance technology. "Alliance Fleet to Earth Station 1, Zara broadcast. "We're here to help. Tell us what you need." The voice that answered was familiar. "Commander Vex, this is Commodore Chen. Fancy meeting you here. We've got about 3,000 people who could use a lift if you don't mind the radiation." Despite everything, Zara laughed. "We'll manage. That's what neighbors do. Isn't it?" The rescue was harrowing. Alliance crews pushed their ships beyond all safety margins, diving into radiation fields that scared their computers into shutdown. But they'd learned from watching the humans. Sometimes you had to ignore the odds and do what needed doing. They saved them all. Every human on the station made it to safety, transferred to Alliance ships that groaned under Earth's gravity but held together through determination and desperate engineering. As the last shuttle departed, the station finally succumbed, breaking apart in a shower of molten metal that painted Earth's atmosphere with shooting stars. "Thank you," Chen's voice came over the comm, thick with emotion. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for showing us how," Zara replied. The journey back to safe space was quiet, filled with humans recovering from radiation exposure and Alliance crew members discovering that the Deathworlders were surprisingly grateful patients. They shared stories, compared technologies, and found common ground in the universal experience of nearly dying in space. By the time they reached the Alliance station at the border, something fundamental had shifted. The rescuers and the rescued had become simply people who had faced danger together and survived. The vote to end the quarantine passed unanimously. In the years that followed, the galaxy discovered what Earth had known all along, that strength wasn't just about survival, but about what you did with that strength. Humans brought their impossible technology and unstoppable determination to every corner of civilized space, but they brought it in service, not conquest. They built hospitals that could treat any species. They created rescue stations in the most dangerous regions of space. They shared their Deathworld crops that could grow anywhere, ending famines on a dozen worlds. They taught their martial arts as meditation and discipline, not just combat. And when the nightmares came, pirates, natural disasters, ancient dangers stirring in the dark between stars, the call went out. And the Deathworlders answered, always. The fear never completely disappeared. How could it? Humans remained what they were, impossibly strong, frighteningly capable, evolved from a world that defied understanding. But fear was joined by something else: respect, gratitude, even love. Children across the galaxy played with toy spaceships, modeled after human rescue vessels. Young beings of all species dreamed of joining the mixed crews that patrolled the dangerous edges of civilization. The phrase, "the humans are coming," transformed from a warning to a promise. 20 years after Omega 7, Zara stood in the Grand Assembly as humans were inducted as full members of the Galactic Council. She was old now by her species' standards, but she'd lived to see her desperate gamble transform the galaxy. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, gray touching her hair, but her spirit undimmed. She spoke of cooperation and hope, of the strength found in diversity, of the future they would build together. "We are Deathworlders," she concluded. "We always will be. We come from a planet that tries to kill us, and we bear the scars of that origin. But we choose to use our strength to protect, not destroy, To build, not tear down. To answer when others call, because we know what it's like to cry out in the dark and fear that no one will come. Today, the galaxy accepts us not despite what we are, but because of it. Today, we truly join the community of worlds, and I promise you this, when you call, we will always answer. When you need us, we will be there, because that's what humans do. We survive together, or not at all. The applause was thunderous. 500 species united in welcome for the ones they'd once feared above all others. As Chen stepped down, she caught Zara's eye and winked. The same irreverent humor that had carried them through that first desperate rescue. Later, at the celebration, Zara found herself sitting with Chen once again. The human was surrounded by a mixed group of beings, including several young ones who listened with rapt attention to her stories. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked during a quiet moment. "Taking that first call? Opening yourselves up to all of this?" Chen looked around the room, at humans and aliens working together, laughing together, building something greater than any one species could achieve alone. "Never," she said simply. "This is what we were meant to be. Not conquerors, not monsters, just people, helping other people. It just took a while for everyone to see it." A young Altaran tugged on Chen's sleeve, the same girl from the picture years ago, now grown and wearing the uniform of the Unified Rescue Service. "Commodore, they're asking for you to give the toast." Chen stood, raising a glass of something that probably would have been toxic to half the species present. The room fell quiet, all eyes on the human who had changed everything by simply answering a call. "To those who call out in the dark," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "To those who answer, to the courage to ask for help and the strength to give it. To the galaxy we're building together, one rescue at a time. To the Deathworlders," the old Altaran elder added, raising his own glass with a smile. "Who taught us that sometimes the monsters under the bed are actually the guardians at the door?" The toast was drunk, the celebration continued, and somewhere in the vast galaxy, a distress signal went out. Within minutes, a ship bearing both human and Alliance crew changed course to respond. Because that's what they did now. They answered. The Deathworlders had shown them how.